All right. Hello everyone. Thank you for joining us. I know must be a flurry of webinars and expert calls that everyone is doing today, given the market, given the various uncertainties that are out there. We hope to add more color and more value to your research process where we are right now. And along the way, I have, with all these webinars, I do these polls. And I find real-time feedback very valuable. So if you are sitting on a Zoom app, you might see a poll pop up. It's a very simple kind of two or three questions. I'll share the collective wisdom at the end of the 35-40 minutes that we have with uh, Zach from Northbeam. But if you would be kind enough to take the poll, I'll share the results, and then I'll be doing a bunch of such similar calls over the next 10 days, and then I'll collate all the responses and send them out. Hopefully, that may add some value to people's kind of sentiment here. But without further ado, I'm going to turn over the mic to Zach from Northbeam. I met him at Shop Talk. I've known Northbeam quite a bit. Shop Talk was in Vegas recently, and again, the world was very different at that time. But on a serious note, what Northbeam provides is extremely valuable, plays an extremely valuable role from brands and advertisers' mind kind of point of view, given they track billions of dollars of spend across a series of platforms, including Meta, including TikTok, and various different platforms that we know and care about. And they provide a very mathematical point of view in terms of how far is your dollar going and how far is that dollar trending. And if you do that over days, weeks, months, years together, you get a very um, interesting repository of data and insights. So that's what we are going to rely Zach on. But with that, I see the poll already getting some responses. Thank you for that. If somebody just joined in the last 10 seconds, please take the poll. And Zach, with that kind of extended introduction, the mic's yours. Again, thank you so much for doing this. When and Please go ahead.
Yeah, awesome stuff. Thanks so much for having us, Rohit. Great to meet you all. I'm Zach. I'm the Senior Director of Partnerships here at Northbeam. Northbeam is a marketing intelligence platform. I can share my screen real quick here for a little bit more context. But Northbeam is a marketing intelligence platform. We offer multi-touch attribution, media mix modeling, and soon with incrementality testing, but we support some of the largest e-commerce advertisers in the world today. Our focus, just for context, is on digital first e-commerce businesses. So some of the fastest growing e-commerce brands that a lot of you are probably familiar with: Timex, Reef, AG1, Athletic Greens, Dr. Squatch, Manscaped, Dollar Shave Club, and so on. Any of the brands that you probably see within the digital advertising landscape that are advertising very heavily across Meta, TikTok, Snapchat, AppLovin, and so on, they're probably using Northbeam as their source of truth to make decisions on a day-to-day basis, as well as use Northbeam for budget allocation, budget planning, and forecasting. So Northbeam's been around for about 6 years. We have over 800 brands leveraging our solution, $84 billion in attributed revenue, $19 billion in ad spend tracked throughout our system. I'm going to give you guys a little bit of context in terms of how we're supporting brands today. And bear with me here. I'm going to keep this brief because I want to get into some exciting data for quarter over quarter performance, as well as Black Friday, Cyber Monday performance, 2023 versus 2024. So I'll get to the data in just a second, but I want to make sure that we're crystal clear on what we're doing here as a business. So like I said, multi-touch attribution, MMM, as well as Northbeam Apex, where we're actually feeding data back into the ad algorithms to optimize their algo based on Northbeam data. This has been very helpful in driving anywhere from a 5 to 30% increase in conversions. But to get into Northbeam,
Hey Zach, quick clarification that 19 billion is a very big number. I thought you guys were doing about 10 billion, but still, it's a pretty big number that you have kind of line of sight into. Any color on US versus international ad spend there?
Yeah, so this is primarily US spend. I didn't segment it. This is $19 billion until since our company's inception.
Okay.
This is we track on an annual basis about $6 to $7 billion in ad spend.
Okay.
I'd say about
Understood.
95% of that is within US, some Canada as well, but the vast majority of our clients, given we're based in the United States, are it's all US spend for the most part.
Okay. Got it. Cool. Cool.
Awesome stuff. Um, I don't want to get too into the weeds with technical stuff, but in terms of why brands trust us today, essentially, when a customer purchases Northbeam, they're buying a net new set of data to help them make better decisions. We have several ways to make sure that we have the most accurate data. We're not prone to cookie deprecation and so on. All of our data is entirely first-party data that we're collecting on behalf of the merchant, the advertiser themselves. So we take several additional steps as well as are actually built our own identity resolution to track users indefinitely and help them make decisions across all of their marketing channels. We have several different attribution models and less relevant to you guys, but essentially just tools for advertisers to help them make decisions. Something that's been very exciting that I've been working on, a lot of these ad platforms, a lot of historically walled gardens have opened up access to share more data with marketing intelligence platforms like ourselves. So we have some very exciting partnerships where many walled gardens are actually sharing us user level impression logs that we're able to give a uh, huge advantage to advertisers in especially measuring video heavy channels, some upper funnel meta campaigns, connected TV, AppLovin, Snapchat, TikTok. We have great partnerships that we're actually able to incorporate impressions at the user level to get deterministic view modeling, and that's been very helpful for channels like TikTok, able to attribute anywhere from 200 to 300% more conversions on that channel. So that's been very exciting, as well as I touched on this before, but real quickly, Northbeam Apex. We initially launched this with Meta, but this is basically our data out product where we're actually feeding into the Meta ad algorithm to optimize their models on our own data on an advertiser specific basis. So this is great for optimizing and increasing performance in a challenging time for a lot of advertisers today.
Hey Zach, this user level views. So can you actually at Northbeam track the same user across platforms now? Like if I am on Reddit and I go to Pinterest and watch some TikTok videos, like can you now as a kind of a person who works with a brand now track that same person across?
Yeah, so we are not prone to some of the tracking regulations. Platforms like Meta and Reddit and TikTok and all those ones that you named, they typically have a siloed view on
Yeah.
just their own channel's performance. We're able to stitch together these customer journeys. There are instances, of course, where we're not able to track someone if maybe they are on a completely different device on airport Wi-Fi and something like that. There are edge cases, but we do the best of our ability to stitch together customer journeys over an infinite period of time across multiple channels, devices, and sessions. So data quality and tracking users across these in a privacy safe manner is our bread and butter.
Okay, awesome. Very cool. Yeah, please go ahead with the data. Yeah, thank you.
Yeah, totally. And then less specific data on the advertising landscape as a whole, but our customers choose Northbeam. This is my favorite slide because it just shows their revenue improvement by, for one, just leveraging our tool to make decisions, but also some of those features and products in terms of optimizing their algorithm. So our customers, before I share the data on performance, are typically doing pretty good. But some of my favorite here, all of our customers for the most part are very obsessive about new customer acquisition. And typically within 180 days post launch, they're seeing over a 7% uptick in new customer acquisition by identifying those upper funnel campaigns that are really driving performance.
Nice.
Now to get into the good stuff that you guys are mostly interested in. Thanks for bearing with me, but I wanted to pull some data. First of all, from this quarter versus uh, a year ago. So Q1 2025 versus 2024. This, I apologies, is incorrect in terms of this should actually have a 4 there. But overall, seeing some pretty interesting trends here. As you can see, I think some leading indicators for investment firms are CPMs, but ultimately what matters most to you guys is share of wallet. We're seeing a slight reduction in share of wallet on Meta specifically across the board with Northbeam. On average, our clients are spending about 60% of their wallet share on Meta specifically. We're seeing also a reduction in Google. Google typically accounts for anywhere from 20 to 30% of share of wallet. That leaves a very small portion of anywhere from 10 to 20% of wallet share for more secondary channels. But we're seeing a large uptick in a lot of these, like Pinterest, Snapchat, and YouTube, that brands are really leaning into because of some of the auction dynamics like Meta CPMs going up and some other channels going up. But overall, it's interesting to call out here that from a CAC perspective on Meta across the board, we're actually seeing it slightly better than the year before, even though CPMs are higher. I think this points to Meta leaning in very aggressively with a lot of their AI-driven campaign optimizations. Um, Later last year, there was a little bit of a drop in performance. However, it seems like the Meta algorithm is performing and doing its job, and it's getting a bit better. We're seeing across the board compared to some other channels like Google, slight increase, actually pretty big increase in the CAC on Google. So seeing some drop in efficiency on channels like Google, slight increase on TikTok and YouTube and so on. But this wallet share is pretty interesting. I'd say for some of these secondary channels like Pinterest and Snapchat, getting a large uptick, still accounting for a very small percentage of wallet share across the board. But year over year, looking very strong for some of these secondary channels that I'm very bullish on.
Interesting. Uh, and yeah, I'm just looking at the data. There's a lot of numbers on the screen here. In terms of kind of to the extent you can say the why behind, is it just that CPMs are going up so much, so the return on ad spend is not that great on Meta? That's why people are shifting the marginal kind of incremental dollar away. Is that what your take is?
Yeah, I mean, and this is a lot of what we help our advertisers understand is a lot of our customers, almost all of our customers for the most part, built their business on Meta ads. And they reach a point of diminishing returns. A lot of them are trying to get around this by launching hundreds of new creatives into the Meta algorithm on a monthly basis, but there's a lot more competition as you spend. We have some advertisers spending even $15 million a month on just Meta, which is absolutely absurd. But there's some at a certain point in terms of blended efficiency across all channels, brands are looking to diversify their channel mix, measure that with Northbeam, but ultimately to get better blended new customer acquisition metrics, um, marketing efficiency ratios, and so on. So a lot of it has to do with supply and demand, more advertisers entering the market, CPMs going up, and advertisers looking to get back to a healthier number by diversifying their channel mix across new marketing channels that can bring them net new eyeballs that are not only on Meta. So channels like YouTube, TikTok, Snapchat, AppLovin, and so on are a great way to increase your brand awareness and expose your brand to new consumers.
Okay. I have a bunch of questions coming in, and just for people on the line, if you could please not send anonymous questions. Our compliance people don't like anonymous questions on these things. That'd be nice, but I'll take these questions as well as the ones I'm getting through email. First, I got an email is Google CAC. Any reason like Google CAC up 15%? Is that again, I'm just hypothesizing there. Anything related to AI overviews or like anything that you think that may be causing CAC to go up so much?
Yeah, again, Google's similar to Meta. Google's leaning in very heavily with some of their AI-driven campaigns. I think what a lot of brands across the board are seeing is that Google search ads specifically, now that was the bread and butter for a lot of advertisers historically, 10, 15 years ago before paid social really made its emergence. Google search, a lot of our advertisers are seeing is not necessarily the most incremental channel for them to bring net new users. It's more so harvesting demand. So Google, I think across the board, is leaning in very heavily into AI-driven campaigns with their rollout of PMax. I'm most bullish on YouTube specifically. These CPM numbers may not look great, but more granular on a per client basis. YouTube, I'm actually very bullish on in driving performance. It's a lot more challenging for advertisers to measure, but as you can see, very strong from a click-through rate perspective, especially on a video-based channel. But Google, we're seeing some advertisers as well. I think this share of wallet is the most indicative of that, but slight share of wallet. People are looking to shift some of that mid and lower funnel spend on Google to more upper funnel channels that will bring them better brand awareness and new consumers.
I see. I guess just on this market share loss on TikTok and kind of the gain that Pinterest and Snap is having, do you think there is something to read in there, or do you feel there is something else going on with the gain that Pinterest and Snap are seeing?
Yeah, a lot of this is they've also changed their algorithms, and a lot of these very view heavy channels, if you think about the way that consumers buy products today, Meta and Google have so much spend and have really optimized around finding users that are in market today that are ready to purchase. Now,
Hmm.
with some of these other channels, historically they've been very challenging to measure using siloed in-platform measurement, like with Snap's own ads manager and Pinterest's own measurement. We've seen a large uptick. A lot of it is due to our advanced integrations with them that have given advertisers a much stronger signal on how to scale these video-based channels that are not necessarily driving clicks, but are driving net new users to the website that are maybe not in market today, but they will be within 30, 60, 90 days from now.
Interesting. Okay, okay. And so is that kind of a function of kind of Pinterest and Snap being plugged into platforms like yours, driving in more dollars, do you feel, or are there fundamental improvements in their ad product from your brand advertisers' point of view that is also drawing in more money?
Yeah, so they've made beyond integrations with tools like Northbeam and so on, I can't take credit for all of that wallet share. They've done a great job at giving advertisers much better signal and incorporating things like a conversions API
Hmm.
where they're able to get better signal, Pinterest and Snap that being, on exactly who is a new versus returning customer and optimizing for the advertiser's own performance. So a lot of these platforms have gotten a lot more data driven, incorporating historical orders
Hmm.
and things like that to optimize. Whereas maybe a few years ago they were more focused on just driving low CPMs that weren't really driving performance, but a lot of them have really turned into more direct response, performance driven channels.
I see. And are there like specific kind of things that the platforms share with you with Northbeam that makes measurement and attribution even more frictionless? Like something that you feel that has changed over the last few months that that Pinterest and Snap are become more easy to work with?
Yeah, totally. I mean, from an impression standpoint, a lot of advertisers don't leverage impression-based attribution within their actual ad platform optimization. A lot of them use clicks because they understand that clicks are the most deterministic. However, with some of these new partnerships in essentially matching on an order basis with these ad platforms and data clean rooms, we're able to have a privacy safe integration that enables us to track impressions across multiple platforms and give advertisers a source of truth on what's really driving performance. So attribution, from our perspective, is actually getting much better and it's much easier to track. Like I said, it's not all because of us. There's a lot of other players in this game, as well as these platforms are just leaning in very aggressively, honestly, to battle against the market leader in terms of share of wallet with Meta. They're looking to steal share of wallet away from platforms like Meta and Google, and a lot of them are doing a great job at doing so.
I see. Couple logos that seem to be not here, but we are curious to ask you is about AppLovin. Maybe take that one first. Do you have kind of what is your take on AppLovin as a platform, and how does Northbeam work with it?
Yeah, totally. So, AppLovin, for context, launched their direct-to-consumer product. So historically, they were primarily working with only mobile apps businesses. So they were working with like Words with Friends, Candy Crush, and so on. About 8 to 10 months ago, they rolled out their private beta for supporting direct consumer brands,
Uh-huh.
and we saw a huge emergence of that. Now, for quarter over quarter, year over year performance, we don't have data from Q1 of last year because AppLovin wasn't supporting our market segment of e-commerce merchants.
I see.
We've already tracked since AppLovin started that across our advertisers. We've tracked close to $100 million in ad spend. We have over 100 advertisers actively spending on their platform.
Hmm.
Now, different clients get different results, but we've actually seen AppLovin week over week recently surpass TikTok in terms of share of wallet.
Okay. Wow, that's pretty. And is if, with regards to kind of where the ad spend is coming towards AppLovin from, like is that new money these people are finding under their pillows, or is this something that incremental dollar that otherwise would have gone to Meta or Google is going to AppLovin?
Yeah, we see it really varies. A lot of times it was creating net new budget.
Okay.
Sometimes it was getting taken away from secondary channels like TikTok, Snapchat, Pinterest, and so on. In Q4 of last year, we saw a large uptick. A lot of advertisers were spending very aggressively on AppLovin, and we still see a lot of our advertisers spending pretty aggressively on them. I think the overall sentiment is a lot of advertisers are cautiously optimistic. Some of them have seen that it's not the best channel for them. Others have scaled very aggressively within that. I think it'll be a matter of time to determine how effective this channel is to be a long-term player. I think there's a lot of room in the market for a lot of these secondary channels to capture 5 to 10% consistently across the board. I think selfishly, that's good for our business. We want a diversified channel mix. And we it's the best case scenario for us if our advertisers are not just spending on Meta or just spending on Meta and Google. And we
Uh-huh.
see that our highest spending, best performing year over year clients are diversifying across at least 10 channels.
Yeah. And in terms of like the hypothesis out there on AppLovin is that they historically have gotten larger clients with more deeper budgets, like with millions of dollars spent, whereas Facebook, Google tend to like Facebook, typically you are having somebody who spends $50,000 a month is kind of pretty good enough person to spend on Facebook. So wanted to see like how does AppLovin bridge the gap between what they have already versus what a typical D2C guy spends per month.
Yeah, 100%. So when AppLovin first launched their beta, they were only onboarding e-commerce merchants that were spending $20,000 a day on Meta ads. Now, I know there's a lot of short seller reports, and I'm not going to speak to that. But in terms of why they did that, is primarily due to the fact that they understand how their algorithm works for the most part, and they wanted to go for brands that were spending a lot on Meta, particularly because those are the advertisers that have the creative muscle built within their organization to feed the AppLovin algorithm hundreds of new creatives a day to really train their model on high spend, diverse creative across
Uh-huh.
tons of different verticals. So they initially started with that 20K a day threshold. They recently opened up access to supporting advertisers that do um, 10 million in revenue on an annual basis. So that can just be a 10 million run rate. So it effectively opened up their TAM over the last month, approximately 10 to 20 times the amount of qualified advertisers that are eligible to to test this new channel.
I see. Interesting. So is 20,000 per, did you say per day on Facebook? Like,
Yep.
and that's kind of the sweet spot that they're targeting as far as Apple 11 advertisers, or is that like just a random threshold?
That was their threshold that they had as a minimum
Ah,
to be
okay.
eligible to test their platform. We had a ton of clients that wanted to test, and um, close to 100 that were qualified that were at that level of meta spend, but they recently just changed that to a $10 million revenue run rate after they've made some changes to their algorithm and kind of figured out their onboarding process, and it's going to be much more self-serviceable. I also wanted to call out this data that you're
Yeah.
seeing here. This is from the initial 2 months of the beta launch. So a lot of advertisers, uh, this is from a snapshot of time, and this is not real-time data. I just want to call that out. But the initial results, we saw very incredible performance. I think a lot of that is honestly due to um, early um, early adopters saw a huge advantage by getting in early, seeing lower CPMs, and seeing very high performance. If you think about it, the way that their platform works from an App 11 user base, a lot of their consumers were used to getting advertisements from primarily other mobile apps. If you've been in like Words with Friends or Candy Crush or something like that, a lot of times you'll get a mandatory like 15-second ad that is essentially a mobile game within a mobile game. However, a lot of our advertisers saw great performance because these consumers were not used to seeing very high performing UGC and great creative that is built by these direct consumer brands. So we saw a lot of early adopter gains very early on. We're seeing it much more level set with Meta today. Some advertisers less, some advertisers more. Again, a lot of our advertisers are cautiously optimistic. They're holding spends and it's not exceeding anywhere near close Meta or Google for that instance. During its peak, we had some advertisers spending anywhere from 20 to 40 to even 50% of their total budgets in Q4 of last year. We've seen that wane down on average anywhere from 5 to 10% across the board. But like I said, cautiously optimistic. I think it'll be interesting to see how this pans out, to see if advertisers can really secure a solid secondary channel beyond Meta for new customer acquisition.
Huh. Okay. I guess, is there any kind of time series that you have on App 11, like over the last 9 months, in terms of how this return on ad spend may have trended, or like where their share of wallet may have trended, just kind of versus, or if you had to guess, like, is their return on ad spend now kind of fallen down to what Facebook? And just a basic clarification, like this. Is this how, as in maybe I'm just being too dummy here, like why is return on ad spend below one? Like shouldn't it be above, like or how are you how is this chart created? Sorry, Zach, for a dummy question.
Yeah, so I also should have caveated with that. Um, we're a multi-touch attribution platform, and we tend to take the most conservative number
Uh-huh.
for a 1 day performance. If we were to look at like the long tail performance, it would be much higher. But these are the numbers that our advertisers are making decisions on how effective their ads were on a day-to-day basis. We understand that if someone clicks something today, they may not purchase for a week, but this is on a 1 day basis that a lot of our advertisers will scale up something like Meta as long as their Northbeam 1 day number says zero point 0.4, which from a financial perspective, you may think, why would you lose
Yeah.
money
Uh-huh.
on a return on ad spend? Their in-platform numbers will be completely inflated. A lot of these platforms will report 5 to 10x return on ad spend. We take a much more conservative lens to give brands a very conservative benchmark that they can count on to scale their business on a day-to-day basis based upon long-term profitability targets. So this is just to make things very apples to apples on a
Huh.
1 day performance. This is what our advertisers were seeing in App Levin's peak performance in Q4, which is a bit skewed. I would say it's now across the board on an average basis uh, is a little bit below Meta, if not the same or higher
I see.
for some advertisers.
Okay. And is like point 0.4 the threshold you think, like people who use um, um, Northbeam use? Also, I just wanted to do a time check with people last 15 minutes. I have a bunch of questions to go through, and a quick reminder if you are still listening to it, would love it if you can take the poll. I already have a bunch of responses. I'll close the poll in 10 minutes. So, yeah, is point 0.4 kind of the threshold you think is the right threshold people use from this, or it's kind of random?
It's heavily dependent upon the products that a client sells, their channel mix, and so on. So for some advertisers, if they sell very low low cost impulse buy, we typically they're gonna want to see a like above a one. But if
Okay,
you sell, a lot of our clients are subscription based or very high LTV based. Those are the advertisers we see that do the best in terms of the long run, that have the CAC wiggle room to essentially lose money on their first order because they have such a high customer LTV across the board. So this can vary. A lot of our clients are scaling all of their channels on a sub one basis. The only exception is Google.
I
Google
see.
is very low in the funnel. So Google, a lot of times it'll be a 2 to 4x on a 1 day basis. But a lot of these upper funnel channels, if you were to scale by what the platform told you, and add up all that revenue, you would have 400% of your total revenue that came in on any given day. We're
Mm-hmm.
Switzerland here. We don't have a horse in the race. We want to be the unbiased source of truth to give the most conservative outlook to help advertisers make decisions on how well you're doing today, not what is happening in just one platform siloed view.
Okay. Yeah, I do have three quick topics to hit with you, Zach. In terms of Reddit, similar kind of questions as I asked on App 11, that logo is missing in your slides. Where does that figure in your kind of platform? Um, is that is that still a platform that people care on your through your lens?
Yes and no. I think Reddit, there's a great, as a Redditor myself, I think Reddit has a great chance to win some share of wallet. We see a much smaller amount of, I think it's primarily due to us working with e-commerce brands entirely. A lot of Reddit ads, it seems to be more like large insurance firms and like maybe still B2C, of course, but less so e-commerce businesses. I think Redditors are pretty harsh on advertising as a whole. We're seeing some clients, I think we have about 40 clients live on Reddit today. Some clients do pretty well. I'd say it's across the board, it's sub 1%
I
share of
see.
wallet. Some advertisers, I've seen them scale as high as 10 to 15%. I'm optimistic that Reddit could be a core channel as well. I think has great long-term impact. I think it takes a while to earn Redditors' trust and become a brand that can actually get performance out of that channel. I think with a lot of these secondary channels, it's a matter of measuring that channel holistically. A lot of advertisers, they have this baseline number of their Meta and Google performance, and they're pretty critical on if they don't get that same performance and they can't measure it, they're not going to risk their dollars being spent on that channel when they know Meta is going to work.
Yeah. Okay. Okay. And what is this meaning of TV is back that you have written here?
Yeah, so it's not showed within these graphics because there's a lot of different TV platforms these days, but we're seeing an emergence. There's new advertising platforms. Comcast is not new, but they recently launched Universal Ads, which
Yeah.
there's a lot of platforms that are doing connected TV, so streaming TV and so
Hmm.
on, that are essentially trying to uh, turn TV advertising and make it as simple as advertising on a channel like Meta. There's been a lot of technical advancements in terms of being able to track TV, like a very old channel that a lot of massive big box retailers and mom and pop shops it's interesting because with TV, it seems to be that mom and pop shops are advertising on TV, like local car washes, and then massive enterprises. And we're seeing an emergence of this real mid-market, high-growth e-commerce brands getting access to being able to launch high-performing creative across 90% of households today that have streaming TV set up in the United States. So TV, we're seeing a lot of our advertisers. It's hard to show with a specific logo, but there's a lot
Yeah,
of in this space. Mountain, I think, just filed uh, for an IPO, but they're a connected TV platform. Tatari is another big one. Universal Ads is Comcast's, and they just launched in January. But a lot of these Paramount Plus and so on, a lot of
yeah,
these legacy TV advertisers are becoming much more savvy and making turnkey platforms to self-serve TV advertisements when historically some of these Comcast businesses were reliant on sales teams of 30,000 plus reps to distribute across mom and pops and massive big box retailers and other industries. But we're seeing an emergence that TV is actually much easier to measure with modern solutions like Northbeam, and I'm very bullish on TV capturing for merchants doing anywhere from over 50 or even over $20 million in revenue. I'm confident that TV could be a solid 10 to 20, even 50% of budgets if they can really measure performance purely just based on that reach. Now, historically, it's very challenging to track from an attribution standpoint because if you watch a TV ad, there's no click involved, but there's been a lot of advancements with household IP matching, connected TV. These streaming apps actually make it much easier because there's much more unique identifiers that we're able to identify users with our identity resolution. If they viewed an ad on Hulu and then went to the website and then purchased, and maybe they had several different touch points across Meta and other channels, it's becoming much easier for us to deterministically measure these channels in the way that these e-commerce brands measure their media.
okay. I guess last quick topic is around any real-time takeaways from what you have seen in the last few days? As in, has that do clients, maybe just to ask you less of a data but qualitative observation, have clients started to react based on what tariff might mean to their business going forward, or is the reaction time slow right now?
Yeah, it really depends on the vertical. We have some of our clients are very impacted and are not scaling budgets. Budgets for the most part are still at least flat year over year. A lot of our advertisers aren't cutting spend dramatically. I think something I'd like to call out for
Yeah.
more real-time updates on this. We release a weekly newsletter where we have week over week auction changes. So if you want to scan this, you can, as this all pans out, we're going to be releasing a lot of topics on um, how the tariffs are impacting ad auctions, how our advertisers are pivoting, and so on. So, uh, shameless plug with the newsletter, but this is a great tool that you guys can use. It's a free newsletter that we release these weekly updates in
Uh-huh.
this format. But in terms of what we're seeing today, um, nothing too crazy. I think a lot of advertisers are trying to figure out how this is going to impact their business model, how this is going to impact their CAC to LTV. I think a lot of it's going to be floated over to the consumer itself. So I expect a lot of key changes occurring for some industries like apparel that are heavily impacted, whereas some industries like health and wellness, like supplements and so on, that may not be as reliant on international production, still are seeing strong performance.
Okay, okay. Uh, I guess also one question I just got in an email. Do you have a kind of a high level overview on just the ad spend? Like you talked about share of wallet, how maybe Google and Meta have maybe lost, and some other guys have maybe temporarily uh, gaining, but from an overall kind of 1Q ad spend perspective, like how did it trend versus 4Q? Like, is there a benchmark that Northbeam tracks?
Yeah, so I mean, comparing Q4 to Q1 is a little bit tough because Q4 for a lot of our advertisers or Black Friday, Cyber Monday
Yeah.
is a lot of times when they spend sometimes 40 to 50% of their budgets in just Q4.
Hmm.
Now with it's also interesting because in Q1, if you're a health and wellness brand, a lot of times that is their peak season. So overall, we're seeing a slight increase in total spend. A lot of brands are flat, some are cutting year over year. We're not seeing the same level growth in terms of total spend year over year that we saw last year compared to 2023.
I see.
So I'd say a lot of like it looks like spend is roughly flat, a little bit higher, but overall, um, pretty flat and not seeing as high of a lift year over year that we saw in previous years.
And last question I got in an email, and maybe last plug is for people who are online and take last 30 seconds to answer the poll questions, and then I'll close it. Was there anything peculiar in kind of month of March that you felt that was different from the trend line that you may have seen in the months of January and February? The reason I say that is kind of the digestion period of like what the tariffs could look like started to probably happen in March, but was wondering if you had any curious observation there.
Yeah, I think we've seen it be more real for a lot of our clients. Some of them have on our media mix model product, we that is more focused on budget allocation, and we've seen some of our top clients reduce their projected spend for the year. But overall, nothing too concerning or nothing to call out specifically on March yet. I think a lot of these are going to be longer tail that we'll be measuring as this all progresses. So it'll be very exciting to see how this really impacts across the board. We're not seeing anything too crazy yet. Overall, slightly slower growth um, for a lot of our advertisers comparing to previous years, but nothing specific to call out on March alone.
Okay, okay. Yeah, I'll ping you for a beer in San Francisco by Friday next week. We'll see how things are progressing at that point as well. I did close the poll, and in case people are have dialed in and not looking at your screens, as in the first question was which mega cap would be a tactical long into 1Q earnings. Meta is the top pick there, followed by I think a tie between Amazon and Google. Nobody chose Tesla there. Second question was how have you changed your investment selection for tech companies after the tariff announcement, if at all? More mega caps, sorry, more large caps, and then more mid caps. Nobody's, and maybe less mid caps. I don't know. So there's some dispersion of opinion in terms of I had a trick question in there. Do you believe recent market reaction is discounting more adverse developments? Yeah, I think more people agree with that. As in, more than half the people say yes, they do agree that it's still discounting more adverse developments. So we shall see. What I'll say is I'll be hosting a few more calls like this over the next 10 days. Probably have um, more polling questions, but more importantly, thank you, Zach, for spending the time with us. Thank you for the presentation. Zach shared he works with a lot of partners that we know and has a treasure trove of data. In case you want to reach out, that is his email. And hope people learned a little bit. For people who joined late, a quick kind of my quick takeaway here is per what we heard from Zach is things have slowed down so far in Q1. It seems that Pinterest and Snap are have gained a little bit of market share in 1Q. It seems AppLovin is rising up the ranks, and in some cases they have even exceeded TikTok as far as share of market is concerned amongst direct-to-consumer advertisers. So that's what the headlines would be, tweetable headlines from the last 45 minutes we spent with Zach. And again, hope everyone has a peaceful weekend ahead. Thank you.
Awesome. Thanks so much, everyone.
Thank you.